welcome back to the start to finish series. So this is where we've got up to so far. He's looking pretty good if I do say so myself, well, the bases at least. The conversion, it's going to be pretty awesome. I'm excited to do that. Well, today we're starting the painting, which is the first step to almost completing this thing. So we've got our guy here. As I've shown you before, kept his head separate. Let me zoom in. Hopefully this is going to be alright for you guys to watch. It looks pretty good on the screen right now. So this is the face, the head that I'm sticking on him. As you can see, it is covered almost entirely by these things. There's very little face to actually work with. It's pretty much the top brow and the top of the head. So because of this, you won't really get the full insight of how to paint faces if I just do a video painting this. So what I've done is I've got another head, this fella, and I'm gonna paint him up today, show you how I paint him, and then basically just do a quick whiz through painting the top of this guy's head. Now, I've painted another one of these faces recently. I really enjoyed it. So it's this guy here. It's I'm not finished. I've still got some bits on the gun, on the back of the gun to do. But hopefully we'll get something looking like this today. Pretty happy with how that turned out. So yeah, let's get into it. Now, when it comes to painting faces, the way I've been taught my whole life is sort of color sections, if you will. It's hard to understand, like sort of simply explain it without sort of not doing any justice to the actual theory. So you've got your face here. It's an incredible rendition of my face I'll be painting today, not my face. So you've got your marine here. And when I say color sections, what I mean by that is there's different sections of the face that usually split up into different colors. So you've got your yellow, which is your forehead, your brow line kind of area. Now this is, I need to reiterate, incredibly simplifying it. There's a lot more work and subtlety that goes into it than just this. So this is just a very rough example. So you've got your yellows, and then your yellows are usually your foreheads, your bright highlighted areas. You've got your reds. Now your reds usually come into play around the middle of the face, the cheeks, the end of the nose, that kind of thing. This is just a little diagram, just explaining what I mean. So yeah, that. Then you come in with some blues for the bottom of the chin, the underside of the face. So this incredibly simple way of thinking it through, looking at it. But this is a very basic construct of what you get taught when you do things like life drawing and life studying. Now, it looks like shit when I put it like this, but later on when I go through the methods of painting these things, you'll notice these colors subtly coming through in the areas that I've painted them. So hopefully that gives some insight into the methods I use, but obviously I'll talk more through them as I go on. So to start off with painting this, I'm gonna base coat the whole face with Cadian flesh tone and a tiny bit of green ink mixed in. This just gives that realistic flesh tone, sort of a colder flesh tone. Obviously you don't want it full of green, so I've got my Cadian flesh tone here. Just a tiny bit to mix in. In fact, I'm going to pull just a blob over to the side and work on that. So it just darkens it down a little bit. Maybe just full spec. Perfect. Right, I'm just using an old crappy brush I don't need to care about, keeping the bristles all neat and tidy. So now it's just a case of coming in and base coating the head. I'm not usually 100% neat at this stage, just because you always come in later on and neaten up anyway. This is just getting a nice thin coat to start with. Alright, we're going to let that dry and then build up the layers until we've got a nice solid layer, base coat even. The base coat has been applied. As you can see, it's a nice smooth colour, looking good. Obviously you've got paint going all over the metal headpiece he's got going on in his hair, but we're not worrying about that until later on. So next up, I have some Bugman's Glow. I'll show you a palette. So I've got some Bugman's Glow here. Got some red, so what I'm going to do is take a little bit of red, mix it in with the Bugman's Glow. And whilst I'm at it, I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of green as well. And then water that down. And that is the mix I'm going to be using for this next part. What I'm going to be painting is sort of under the eyes and in the eyes. Paint some shadow in there, because at the moment it's a little bit bright. I'm making sure I get under the bags on the eyes as well, just so when I come in and highlight them later, but yeah, they're doing what I want them to do. They've got the shade. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take the mix we've just made and add it in to our original skin color mix, just to rosy it up a little bit. And you want to find sort of a midpoint between the original mix and the one we've just made. Now what I'm going to do with this is, like our colour theory before, red in the middle of the face. I'm going to paint up the cheeks and underneath the cheeks here. wait for that to quickly dry. It's quite thin paint, so it'll dry fairly fast. And just bring that up just a little bit more. Maybe bring it in just on this little crease. Okay, looking all right. Now, I want to darken down those eyes just a little bit more, because that'll help for when we want to shade them. And highlight them. So we've got our original base color, we've got our eye shadow color, and then we've got the rosy cheek color. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the shadow color we originally had and add a lot more green this time, so it really darkens it down. A little bit more. So there we go. This is a lot more of a sort of dead dark brown. Now I'm going to go into the eyes again and just a little bit of this. It's quite thin consistency because we've been using ink and very washed down paint, but should be alright. Very hard to paint this stuff with a camera in your face, unfortunately, but I'll see what I can manage. I've got a little bit much on there, so that may be a bit too watery. We'll just leave it for now, because I think it's going to be alright. And we'll move on to the next section. So just before we move on, I'm going to take that first eyeshadow colour and I'm going to quickly fill in the mouth, because I forgot to do that before. Wait for that to dry, and then, as we did before, take a little bit of that darker ink mix we made. Put that in there. Now, keep in mind that darker ink mix was just so I could make it a little bit darker. You can, of course, completely go over that step and just make the correct mix on the first time going around, but you live and you learn, you know, it's all a learning process. So the next stage, we've done the red section. Next up is the blue. So we've got our original mix for the skin tone. I'm going to take that some of that to the side. I'm going to take a tiny little bit of a dark Prussian blue, really nice blue. Quite thick. Now you can see there immediately that's way too harsh mix, so what I'm going to do is take a little bit of that mix and then mix it back into the base. Take some water, thin it out a little bit, and there you go. That is our new mix right here. Now this I'm going to be using on the lowers of the face, like the colour theory we talked about before. pretty subtle at first. But what I'm going to do is, actually whilst I'm at it, we've got the hairline here. So if you track the end of my brush, usually it goes up and across to about here. So we're going to take that blue mix and we're going to sort of draw on a hairline for this guy. Now the reason we're doing this is because he's got a shaved head, and one of the reasons here we've got the blue down on the bottom half of the face, on men at least, is because that's where, when you shave, you get sort of stubble, and stubble, it's got this sort of blue look to it that looks, well, like stubble when you see it in person, but from a distance that we'll be looking at this, it kind of looks bluey greyish. So that's the colour we're trying to recreate. So reiterating, this is with that bluey mix we made for the bottom of the face. It's hard to, like I said, it's hard to get this on camera. Now, it's not quite as strong as I want it to be, so I'm going to add a tiny little bit more blue to the mix. Just a little bit. Spice things up a bit. Sometimes when you're painting this small, you forget quite how small the area is, and you forget to look back from a distance and think, oh, it actually looks alright from a distance, or at least from not directly up in its face. So I've got a little bit more blue on the mix. I'm just gonna come in and paint that back on this hairline we've created. The shaved scalp look. Might go for a little bit more up here. If you don't get the perfect blend on this, don't worry, a hairline shouldn't really be a perfectly smooth transition. So now what I'm going to do, and this is just for the back of the head, is add a tiny little bit more blue. Now this is, once again, personal preference, but I just want a little bit darker at the back of the head, just because, well, it's at the back of the head. So just around this dome curve. And boom, we've got that shaved head look. Now you can also do this. This is a good method of practice for any kind of hairy areas. For example, the cheeks and the chins of Marines. Right, so we've almost got all our scaffolding colours in. I like calling them scaffolding colours because it helps you build up to then do the fancy work afterwards. So we've got the reds, we've got the blues, next up is the yellows. Now I've got a sunny skin tone here, plenty of other things. I just recently bought this because usually I'd be making a mix of very small amount of a scrofulous brown, love that name, and our original mix, but I'm going to be adding just this because it means I'd have to do less mixing. Just makes my life a little bit easier. So take some of that. I am going to add another tiny little bit of, you probably want to watch this. So I've got my watered down mix here. Tiny little bit of green from the ink. In fact, that is way too much immediately. It just there's the colour, so take another bit, the original mix between those two. Water it down just a tad. There we go. So this one is a little bit darker than the straight out of the bottle, but it should work alright. And then we just need to put that on the model. So as I said before, this is for the sort of forehead and the nose kind of area. Maybe the brow line as well. So just cover the lot. And what I'm going to do here is catch a few other details just about it, like these little folds here. They're called the nasolabial folds. The stuff you learn whilst you do art. So I'm going to hit a little bit of the cheeks, the bags under the eyes. Now I can start doing some other work. So we've got the basic premise of a face down. So I'm just going to take that dark red we used for the shadows in the eyes. I'm going to take that and I'm going to put that under the cheek here. So I'm going to just clear that up a little bit. Now, this is when you need a really fine brush. I'm going to draw back in some of the wrinkles. Now, if this doesn't quite work out for you, you can just go over with the base tone we used, and then really finally come in with that yellow colour. But I'm going to see how this works for me. it's a bit of a mess. So what I'm going to do is just push on, and I'm going to come back in with some pure Cadian flesh tone. I haven't mixed this with anything but water, just to thin it out a bit. And I'm going to go over some of these details we've just painted yellow, just to give a sort of an overtone to them. Now here is where I'm going to just draw in the wrinkles, like I said. Pick up the brow. Pick the bags out under the eyes. Gonna be very up close and personal for this bit. Right. Next up, bring in some highlights. And for that, I'm going to be taking our Cadian flesh tone and our sunny skin tone. I'm sort of going to be mixing them together to create a bit of a brighter highlight. Closer to the flesh tone than the sunny skin tone. Another good example for what you could use is Kids Love Flesh. I just enjoy practicing mixing stuff. It's good practice to get into. So that's the next mix. And this, I'm going to be using to highlight certain areas. Now we want the look of the light hitting down, and so we want to focus on the forehead, the brows, the nose, and maybe a little bit of the cheekbones and stuff. So I'll show you that right here. Just build that up a little bit. Get the nose. If there's any scarring, now's a good time to pick it out. We've got some wrinkles on the side of the face that we can always pick out. And then of course the forehead. Very hard to film this bit. Next up, the extreme highlights. Now I'm going to take our highlight mix we just made. And I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. Now, not too much, I don't want this guy to look like a ghost. Just enough for it to be noticeable. There we go. Now this is going to be kind of a select area. Kind of want to focus on this corner of the face, the edges of the brow, kind of. I'll show you how that looks. I always find it easier to paint these wrinkles on this side. Take a little bit more white and just bring in some pin highlights on this guy. That's a bit much I've put there. So fortunately this is very thin down, so I can just fix this problem immediately. And next up we've got the mouth and the eyes. Looking grisly so far. So, eyes are kind of sort of a big bad for a lot of people. Very frustrating to paint, that much is true, but there's a few things that you can do to help. Fortunately you only need 2 colours, well, for eyes this small anyway, and what I've gone for there is black and pallid witch flesh. I'm going to mix a little bit of white into there, but you never want to go full white. Full white is very stark and it's very hard to get a forgiving final look out of it. Another point is eye direction. A lot of people try and draw eyes so they're looking straight on, and that's even more unforgiving than anything else, because you've got to make sure you've got 2 whites, bits of white on either side of the black pupil to make it look like it's staring at you. Otherwise it looks either like some very surprised person if there was too much white, or it looks like some demon if there's no white at all. You can leave it like this if you want a sort of mysterious figure, but one thing I like doing is keeping the pupils in one corner of the eye, like I've got here, so you kind of get a bit more emotion on the face. So this guy's like got a bit more movement in his head, he's turning, so he's got his head like that and his pupils are up there. I really like doing that because it adds a lot more movement in the model. For example, here, this is a very movie model, so if I put his head facing down like that, I'd have his eyes pointing up towards his chainsword. I think that would look very cool obviously this isn't the head I'll be using. We've got this beauty. Who knows? We'll see which one works better at the end, actually. So, enough rambling. I'm going to start off by getting my pallid witch flesh, a tiny little bit of white in there. Now, this is extremely hard to both paint and film. This guy's eyes are very, very, very small. So you want a little bit on the brush. This is a hold your breath moment, just because you really don't want to pick out much. They're not very detailed in terms of eyes because they're ridiculously small models. So I'm just going to do this. If you go over there, it's not the end of the world, we can fix that. But it's just very hard to both film and paint. So, not particularly great, but it's fairly easy to fix up. Alright, we've got the colour based in there. Now to fix this up, we're going to go back to our dark red mix. We're going to fix the areas around the eye, the eyeball. And there you go, we've got some, maybe a little bit more on this one. Got some alright white to the eyes to be working with there. So we've got our base to work from, the pupils, and this is just going to be pure black, the very tip of the brush. Now, I've said before I want him sort of looking over to where my finger is now, so that just means I place the dot of black in the top right corner of his eyes, and I hope this looks alright. Okay, well, it seems I've done him looking straight on. that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just shows, I guess, it can be done. Accidents happen, and sometimes they're alright. Another danger with doing it front facing is they can look a little bit cross-eyed, but this seems to be alright. If I zoom out now, everything looks horrible zoomed right in. But this, if I'm honest, doesn't look too bad. I'm just gonna come in with a bit of a rougher small brush and paint out the areas that aren't quite filled in because they're going to be a different colour. I'll show you how it looks. So I was in the process of filling in the area around the head, and I realised I'd completely forgotten the teeth. Teeth is, these things are almost as hard as the eyes. You don't have to be as precise, well you do, but it's got the big mouth around it to guide you. So I'm going to take some of that pallid witch flesh I got from earlier for the eyes, and I'm going to just gently put it into the mouth. Just try and catch those teeth. It does look a bit dopey, but you know, what can you do? Whilst I see it on the camera here as well, just going to take some white for that pin highlight we were doing, and I'm going to take it and just catch this little inside of the furrowed brow. Top of the nose here. It might be a good idea as well to take that shadow red and just darken this lip a little bit, this bottom lip. We don't want it to look like he's wearing lipstick, but we do want him to look like a normal human being. There you go. Look at that, that's looking good. Now when you're looking at it up close like this, it doesn't look great. You see all the brush marks, but that's honestly, that's part of painting. You've just got to live with that. And realize it doesn't look as bad as you think, because when you zoom out like that, these things actually look really nice. Better in fact than my first attempt. So that is the basics of the head. Now I'm gonna repeat that process on this bald guy. The only difference being that he doesn't have hair on top, so I'm just gonna have to draw the hairline on the top as well. So I hope you enjoyed that, and hope you learned some things from it. Definitely a really nice way to paint faces. I do suggest getting a very small brush, very thin, fine brush, and taking care of that brush as well. So yeah, I'll see you on the rest of the armor.